All right, welcome in. It is Section 1904, and this is Tuesday. I'm Darren Smith. He's John Gennaro. We're with you here for some period of time, as long as my vocal cords hold up. I will say I'm still struggling getting back from Cancun. The worst thing, I would rather any other part of my body hurt, within reason, other than my vocal cords. So I did have to turn to Amazon yesterday to order a supply pack of lozenges just so I can make it through the week, so I can make it through this podcast, so I can prepare for a broadcast, not tonight. SDFC is playing tonight, but we do have a broadcast coming up on Saturday against Sporting KC. So we will go as long as possible. But John, since you and I can see one another, I might give you a visual cue, which will be me just covering my mouth, muting my microphone. That is your cue to stretch out whatever your thought is. How are we doing today? You said you don't want to talk about sports. I barely want to talk, so this is going to be a banger of an episode.
This is going to be a banger of an episode. I will try and ask you one-word questions. Have you tried gargling?
No.
Okay, I'll explain why in a second. So when we first started this podcast, I told you I have asthma, and I was on this daily asthma medication that's like a powder that you like inhale, and it helped my asthma, but couple times during the day, I would like lose my voice or I'd get incredibly hoarse all of a sudden. And I didn't want it happening on the podcast, so I stopped doing it for a while. And then my asthma got bad, so I started doing it again. And I went and saw my doctor a couple weeks ago for my annual physical. My doctor loves when I give him problems that he has quick and easy solutions for. So I explained to him, I'm like, I'm taking this asthma medicine. It's great for my asthma, but like twice a day, I like lose my voice or I go real hoarse or whatever. And he smiled real big and he got excited. And he was like, all that powder is it's attaching itself to your vocal cords, and that's what's making you hoarse. I was like, oh my God, that sounds terrifying. He's like, no, it's totally fine. I was like, what do I do? He's like, gargle with water after you inhale the thing. It'll wash off your vocal cords and all that hoarseness will go away. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. So maybe try gargling. I've heard gargling with salt water is particularly effective for someone in your situation.
All right. Well, it is Tuesday, so I still have a couple of days. We still have this podcast, obviously, but I am taking Adrian Garcia Marquez turned me out of these Fisherman's Friend, the original extra strong menthol cough suppressant and oral anesthetic.
Got mine right here. I keep it close by.
So that is, this is the first sponsor of Section 1904. It is the Fisherman's Friend Oral Anesthetic. Feels like it's very appropriate.
It's going to be the name of today's podcast. Fisherman's Friend's favorite podcast.
Yeah, Section 1904, Oral Anesthetic. Is that the one that I gave you, or have I turned you onto this product now and you have resupplied?
No. I hammered through the bag that you were kind enough to give me, and you being my pusher for Fisherman's Friend got me hooked. So as soon as I ran out, I said to my wife, I was like, I need more Fisherman's Friend. And the next time she was at CVS, she saw it. She was like, hey, look, you can get these things at CVS. So I think I got a handful of bags lying around somewhere, but there's always one sitting right in front of me when I'm doing this podcast, just in case.
All right, good. Well, look how many. Not great. How many I ordered yesterday? Yeah, I ordered the Costco size supply of Fisherman's Friend. So I think we'll be okay. I think we understand what the cause of this situation is. So, I can admit it. I know what it was. And then you combine it by having to speak a couple of different times yesterday. Not only am I doing this, so there's another podcast out there for any SDFC fan who might not be aware of it. It's called Behind the Flow. One of those two. Yeah. And, it's been out there for a little while now. Adrian hosts it, and they got me looped in over the last couple of episodes. So been doing that last week, did that again yesterday. So they ask really smart questions. I do like the questions that the producers of this podcast are asking. It's thought provocative in a way that I wasn't sure that I was prepared for, but in a good way. I don't mean that to knock the people who are producing it, but they're just asking really thought provocative questions about SDFC and some of the experiences that we have had. So I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it so far. Some of the subject matter, I'm like, wish I had brought it up on this podcast. They talk a little bit about signing college players, if that's a big part of the future of the club. Is the club getting a little bit tired? Do they have enough gas left in the tank to make it through the rest of the regular season? Things like that. Like it's good. I worry about. Yeah, like it's, these are good questions. Like these are the right questions to be asking. And the production company is in England. So we have to kind of operate on their schedule just a little bit. Yeah, I know. I'm going to pitch him on doing some work with this podcast at some point. So I'm
Local
trying to leave a good
production
impression
company.
of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm definitely trying that as well. So there is a game tonight. I know for most people will say, hey, this doesn't matter. If you are a subscriber to Section 1904, A, thank you. B, front row seat showed up in your inbox this morning, just past 7 o'clock. A little bit earlier than normal, John, because John had to go yell at some urban planners or some such thing. And I did notice there was a story there that the young players are expected to feature a little bit more prominently tonight against Mazatlan, which does need the match. They do need the match. So, you probably are going to get an effort from Mazatlan tonight, 7 o'clock, Snapdragon Stadium. No radio, Apple TV Plus. Did see that. And I know people, and John, you might be one of these people that will be like, yeah, I don't know how interested I am in this. SDFC's already been eliminated from Leagues Cup, so what's the point? I would just say this. I think one of the more important matches of the season was one that didn't count at all, and that was the game against Club America. And the reason I say that is because that was an opportunity for players who don't normally get a chance to start to play significant minutes. I do actually have the team sheet in front of me because I wanted to take a peek at this morning.
Can I guess is it the team sheet from the Club America game?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I didn't watch this game.
It wasn't on TV. You couldn't watch it.
And I don't think I listened to it on radio either. I think I tried to catch up later. I was busy that day. I don't remember what I was doing, but I was busy. My apologies. I think that was the first start for San Diego FC for Pablo Cisniega, right or wrong?
That is correct.
I think it was the first start or at least playing time for Manodua. Right.
That is correct.
Okay. And then there was a third one that I was like, it was his first time too. And I don't remember. Oh, was it Milan Olaski's first time?
It was his first start.
Okay.
Of any capacity. And it was also Ian Pilcher's return to play after missing about 10, 11 weeks after his first start against Austin went wrong. It really went wrong, something that Ian would tell you and something he has told me. As a matter of fact, that game, 7 of Milan Olaski's 10 goals came after that game.
So
do with that what you will. Do with that what you will. So, up until that point, he had been a sub, but that was an opportunity for him to say, hey, I don't have to be a sub here. I can play 90 minutes. I can be a starter. I can score goals in the first half of a soccer match, And then he went ahead and he did that. So, I know the game doesn't count, but it mattered. And it mattered to the players who were playing. So I'm going to go. I don't know how long I'm going to stay. My in-laws are leaving tomorrow, and I'd like to spend a little time with them before they go. So I will go just because I want to see what some of these players look like when given this opportunity. Now, it's going to be a much different opponent. Club America came in here with its under 20s. That's not going to be the case with Mazatlan, which, as we said, it needs the match if they want to advance in the Leagues Cup, and I'm pretty sure that they do. So, I would guess you're going to get a really, really good effort out of them. And, from that standpoint, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I think it could be one of those as you get set for the final 9 MLS matches of 2025. It just is one of those that you might tuck away and say that the experience of it might be pretty valuable to the guys who are getting the most playing time that they've had in any Major League Soccer match, official match. So, that's all. That's all I would say about it. I'm not trying to sell it because I want you to listen to radio or because I want you to buy tickets or even that I want to watch it on television or want you to watch it on television. But, I do think that those things could matter. They might matter a little bit more than the aesthetic would suggest when one team is 2-0 and the other team is 0-2. And most of us have already started preparing for Sporting KC on Saturday, right? Which is probably fair.
Right. And I'm excited for this, believe it or not. It is going to go on the second TV. The main TV will be the Padres. But the second TV, I am going to watch. I'm going to try and pay attention because I am excited to see all of these guys who are normally not given either a start or significant playing time to be given significant playing time in this environment against this level of competition to see what they have, right? This isn't quite a preseason game because the other team's going to be trying really hard. But in that article I linked to on Front Row Seat, there were 3 quotes from Mike Yvaris, and maybe it was 1 quote chopped up. But it was chopped up into 3 quotes, and I thought it was hilarious because the first quote I'm going to read them word for word. The first quote from Mikey is, "For us, it's clear. We want to finish the tournament strong because we're here to win. It's a competitive culture that we have here, and every time we step on the field, whether it's 5v5 in practice or a game or a scrimmage, we want to win the game." Wow, sounds like Mikey's really going for it. Second quote, "It's an opportunity to continue to make our squad bigger, giving some guys opportunities to see how they do, and it also gives us an opportunity to set ourselves up to finish the summer strong, get some guys right, give everybody the stimulus that they need so we can hit the ground running after this game." And then third quote, "We believe that our best is still yet to come. Getting guys healthy, fit, and layering in those final details, that's what's on our mind right now." So the first quote was Mikey just going like, "Look, I don't want to lose this game. I want to win this game." And then the next two quotes were like, "Everything we're doing in this game is built on the idea that we want to set up for the rest of the MLS season to have, some of these guys on the fringes ready to go, some of our star players well rested and fit, et cetera, et cetera." But it's going to be interesting. I kind of hope that I get to see some of these guys that I haven't seen much of or haven't seen at all. Like, who was the guy last week? You said his name, and I was like, I forgot that guy exists. Heine Bruseth? Is he still with the team?
No, he's gone. He's been loaned out. He's back in Norway.
Okay, but
Do you want a little bit of fun trivia on where he's playing in Norway? Because you know me, I've got all the Norwegian trivia committed to memory.
Hit me with it.
I don't know, we'll move on.
Damn it! All right, I want to see some Pedro Soma. I didn't see much of David Vasquez. I want to see David Vasquez. Who didn't David Vasquez come from Philadelphia Union?
Yes.
So him and Milan Olaski kind of did the slow swap for one another, right?
Yeah, kind of.
They're both attacking players. I'm excited for him. Who was the other kid? It was like the first one they got.
Harangi.
Oh, Harangi. I haven't seen. I saw a little bit of Harangi, but not a lot. And there's other guys, like I'm scrolling through the roster and it's like I see names. I don't know, like have I seen Hamadi Diop in months?
We have not. We have not seen him unless he played in the Tigres match. We have not seen him in a while. He was dealing with an injury and he has not found any minutes that I can remember since he's been eligible to play. So I might be off, but I'm pretty sure we're mostly right about that.
Okay,
that's
last
a former
question.
first overall pick, by the way. That's a former first overall draft pick from 2023, Charlotte.
That's okay. So I'd love to see him. There are some guys on here listed as being injured, and rightfully so. There's also guys I know are injured that aren't listed as injured, like Andres Reyes. Alvarado's out for the rest of the year, right?
Alvarado and Reyes are both out for the rest of the year.
Okay, the FOTMOB, which I really like. FOTMOB does not have the injuries updated as such, but yeah, I'm interested in seeing some of these people that we don't normally see to get excited about them because like we were just talking about, those were opportunities for Cisniega and Dua and Ilaski to show like no, I can play at this level with everyone else, and maybe we get someone else out of that tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I don't know how much more I'm going to watch of Leagues Cup. I mean, I could talk myself into some of this. I could talk myself into the Miami Pumas match tomorrow. I could talk myself into Galaxy and Santos Laguna. I could talk myself into Seattle and Tijuana. Seattle is sitting on top of the MLS standings, and Tijuana still has a chance. They still do have a chance. Tigres is the only team that has won both of its games for Liga MX, meaning that they are 2-0. They don't have one of the penalty wins. Mazatlan. So it also is fair to point out that SDFC kind of caught a tough draw here, at least according to the standings, because Tigres is number 1, Mazatlan's number 3 on the table, and Pachuca's number 7. So maybe they caught a little bit of a tough draw, which I think was the point when you're one of those pot 3 teams or whatever it is. I'm not sure. But Could I talk myself into watching more of this? I could. Will I? I don't know. So I don't know how much I'll talk about it. So let me also just promote tomorrow's podcast since we're here. Last week, and I guess this is just fortuitous timing, we booked a reporter and a broadcaster from the website backhealed.com. Not a website I will admit to knowing much about before I got the gig working with SDFC. But I started hunting around looking for some good analysis, and I found this website, Backhealed. They do a good job, and it's subscription-based. And I think for me, I don't know. Should I talk about how much I pay? I mean, whatever. It's $50 a year. Feels like pretty good value to me. I feel like it's been 100% justified in terms of my broadcast prep. But tomorrow we're going to have Joseph Lowry on the show, who coincidentally just like 10 minutes ago before we started recording, actually it's a little bit about an hour ago, put a post up called How SDFC, or the title is How SDFC is Dominating MLS and Making a Case as the Best Expansion Team in History. So this guy's going to come on the show tomorrow. It's our first experience with him, so we will talk a little bit more in depth about MLS and Leagues Cup and SDFC specifically tomorrow with Joseph Lowry. But if anybody out there is interested in this, I think you can subscribe or get a free 3-day trial. So if you just want to rifle through this as quickly as possible and read all the SDFC content, you could do that. We'll talk about Milan Oloski tomorrow. We'll get his thoughts on that situation, since I know there's a lot of chatter in the Discord about it. But that'll be tomorrow, and the game will be tonight. And, again, I'm not sure how much we'll really talk about it. First, the overarching big picture themes of SDFC and Major League Soccer. So there you go. All right. So with that said, John, you don't want to talk about sports. How come?
Last night, the Padres game, when it was ending, social media was like on fire. Padres Twitter and Padres Blue Sky was on fire with takes about JP Sears and Yuki Matsui and the new offense and what, like this one game was somehow everything that AJ Preller had done at the trade deadline boiled down, and in that way it was a colossal failure. And I didn't see it that way. And I was annoyed because I maybe I'm getting old, but I wanted to do the Buddy Black thing and just be like, sometimes you lose a game. That's baseball. Sometimes the new pitcher that you hope is good has a bad start. Sometimes it's his first start. Sometimes the guy that we talked about as being a potential back of the rotation starter performs like a back of the rotation starter. And it doesn't need to be more than that. And I at some point it got wrapped up in the season ticket increases, and I understand the frustrations there with people that have been paying for them for a long time. But yeah, I didn't take away from that game. Like, even my group chat, it's like the third inning. My group chat's like, well, Sears sucks. I'm like, sure, tonight he does. Does that mean anything? Does that change anything about what the team thinks JP Sears is or can be? Probably not. And so I was just frustrated by how much everyone was taking away from it. And then the conversation was like, well, even if you ignore Sears, the offense couldn't do anything against the Diamondbacks. And it's like, that's a good pitcher on the mound, and sometimes your offense just does that. Like, it's okay. It's not you're gonna win 50 games, you're gonna lose 50 games. It's the other 60 that decide
right,
if you're a good team or not. Like, they're gonna lose some games sometimes. It puts more pressure on them, I think, tonight and tomorrow night, because you don't want to lose a series to the Diamondbacks, who came in really scuffling. But outside of that, I don't think I took anything away from the game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I prepared, if we wanted to dive into this, to say, hey, you would be right to point out that this is one of JP Sears' worst starts ever. That it came in his first start as a Padre is just a little bit of extra flavor on top of it. I thought Bernie Wilson, do you still follow Bernie Wilson, formerly the Associated Press?
When I'm on Twitter, yes. I don't think he's navigating.
He's got a very sardonic style of humor, I think you would agree.
Yeah.
And he tweeted out at the end of the game, sounds like the season is over.
But I remember my brain immediately jumped back when JP Sears was getting nailed in his first start as a Padre in Arizona. My brain went back to Robert Suarez. Robert Suarez's first time coming into a game for the Padres, I think his first appearance ever in Major League Baseball. He came in for a save situation in Arizona. The Diamondbacks tagged him. He blew the save. He lost the game. And there was so many people who were just like, well, this guy sucks. The whole AJ Preller went big on this guy from Mexico or wherever, and he sucks, and AJ sucks, and they've ruined this whole thing, and now we have a closer that we can't use. And 3 years later, Robert Suarez is one of the best closers in all of baseball. And it's like, sometimes, a bad start is just a bad start. Sometimes a bad appearance is just a bad appearance. I appreciated that AJ Cassavell even went so deep as to be like, look, this guy's sweeper is amazing, and last night his sweeper wasn't working. Also, he was pitching to a catcher that he's probably never thrown to before in a completely new environment, pitching for a team that has, playoff, if not World Series aspirations for the first time in years. Like, it makes sense that he was off his game a little bit. But yeah, it's the people who needed to jump to conclusions after one middle of the regular season game against the Arizona Diamondbacks. I was just like, we don't need to do that. We don't need to respond to this one game.
Well, it doesn't seem, it feels like you're in the minority. So, I feel, and I guess it would be fair to point out, the team is 2-2 in August. So that is post trade deadline. Mm-hmm. And I guess if you wanted to, if you really, really wanted to, you can make a case that 2 losses are sort of directly linked to the trade deadline, right? Randy Vasquez knew, wow, okay, they're moving on from me. Yeah. Ed probably wasn't really into it on Saturday, was it, when he pitched last? And then last night, here's this guy who, all these circumstances. But, you're not trying to win the first week of August with the moves that are being made here, And I will say, there is, and you and I talked about this yesterday, I do think a little bit of grace is required, especially when you're making this many moves. A little bit of grace is going to be required here because it's not like all these things are going to click immediately. And last night was the best example of that. And I don't know that anybody would promise you that everything was going to click. I think you're right. I think some of this was probably fueled a little bit by the message that was sent to season ticket members last night, where all these names were included in this email from the Padres front office saying, we're going to be raising your ticket prices next year. We'll get to that here in a bit.
Oh, God, they did include them in there.
Yeah, they did.
That's
in great detail.
They should not have. JP Sears' name should not be in the email to season ticket holders.
Probably should have rethought that one. That being said, it is. So, it becomes an easy thing to post and make fun of and all that. Where was I going with this? I forgot my train of thought. So it was posted out there. I was thinking a little bit about, having covered the 2010 Padres, people might remember that team because that was the team that went out there, didn't spend any money.
What a team.
Won 90 games. Buddy Black won Manager of the Year. Kevin Correa might have been the most expensive player on the team. I think I have that right. I want to say Adrian Gonzalez may have been on that team. Had a pretty good season. David Eckstein was on that team. He was the leader. Kevin Kuzminoff was on that team. That's a team that went.
I know who the most expensive player on that team was.
Jeff Morad. Not even joking. Somebody in that front office told me what he's paying himself salary-wise, he would probably be our most expensive player.
No, the most expensive players, because Jeffrey Morad, not a player, is now the general manager of the Texas Rangers, is Chris Young. Second most expensive is Adrian Gonzalez. Third most expensive was John Garland. And none of them were making, Chris Young topped out at $6.3 million, which is, amongst the guys not on rookie deals, probably cheaper than everyone on the Padres roster this year.
How much is Kevin Correa making that year?
I don't know, because this site doesn't want to load. I'll try this one. This is only giving me 2025.
Maybe he was their most expensive signing or something like that. But
that sounds right.
They flipped over the cushions and found a couple of quarters under the seats and were able to add a couple players at the trade line. And people remember this because they added, do you remember who was added at the trade deadline that year?
Of course I do, Darren. Not only do I remember who was added at the trade deadline that year, I specifically remember the very, very early parts of Padres Twitter saying, is there any way that we can put together a parade downtown to celebrate Jed Hoyer getting Ryan Ludwig? Is that the name you were going to say, Ryan Ludwig?
Ryan Ludwig and Miguel Tejada.
I forgot about Tejada.
Were both brought in at the trade deadline. There might have been one other player, maybe a relief pitcher, but it didn't bring anywhere near the same level of energy and excitement as those two players. And people might remember that the season ended up outside looking in. They ended up losing 2 out of 3 in San Francisco to end the 2010 season. And it was deemed a bit of a failure, even though the team had a $37 million payroll. Maybe it bumped up to 39, 40, somewhere in that range by the end when all the accounting was done. And I want to say Ryan Ludwig was sort of scapegoated, blamed, perhaps, because he came in and didn't do all that much, if I remember correctly. Don't have the numbers in front of me. I could look him up. But he didn't do all that much, and it seemed like Petco Park really got in his head. And, he was sort of, and then to make things worse, the player that they traded him for went on to win 2 Cy Young Awards. It just became this easy thing to go back in time with the benefit of hindsight and say, well, that was a mistake, wasn't it? What were we doing? But in the moment, I think you're right. I think in the moment, everybody was on board with this. And again, 90 wins is not an insignificant amount in the history of the San Diego Padres. Years later, I was able to talk to David Eckstein, and I asked him about that team specifically. And I said, what happened? Did the team choke? Was the team just not good enough? What was the deal?
Did they lose? They lost like 13 in a row or something like that at the end of the season. Wasn't it that team?
Something like that late. San Francisco kind of got its act together. I want to say they came in for a 4-game series in August, and Bochy and Flannery had that team like lathered up, ready to fight. And Matt Cain was plunking guys, and Aubrey Huff was like flipping dudes at second base on hard slides. Like they came in here itching for a fight. And I think that
10 losses in a row
intimidated the Padres, and the Padres couldn't get out of this tailspin. But that being said, it still came down to whatever it was going to happen at the end of the year. Matt Latos ended up getting that tattoo. We can all tell our own Matt Latos stories if we want. John's got some good ones. I've got some good ones. But, we all remember Matt Latos got a tattoo right before he was set to start one of the biggest games of his fucking career.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thing just, San Francisco went on to win the World Series, by the way. Like San Francisco was a good team. The first of their 3 World Series titles over the next 6 years or whatever. But when I interviewed David Eckstein, he came down for Comic-Con because his wife is a really big deal in the comic universe. With her own clothing line. Ashley is really, really talented. And I had the chance to just like flat out ask him, like, what was the deal? And he said, it's not that we brought guys in. It's that the guys that we brought in were treated differently. And that was the problem. He goes, we all could admit what that team was, right? He didn't say that we were a bunch of scrubs. That's a guy who's a 2-time World Series MVP. But he said, we were grinders. Everybody came in every day not guaranteed of much of anything other than Adrian. Adrian was guaranteed that he was going to play first base because he was hitting a bunch of home runs. But nobody else was really guaranteed. Like we were the ultimate meritocracy. And when those guys came in, they were treated differently than us. And that was the moral of that story. And he went on to tell Jed Hoyer that. He went on to tell Buddy Black that, because I don't know how much longer Dave played for the squad. But he said that was the problem there. Guys felt like we got us to the trade deadline because we played a certain way where nobody was guaranteed anything, any starting opportunity. We had to earn almost every single at-bat that year. And those guys came in here, and when they weren't performing, they were still given the at-bats. And that just changed the dynamic of our clubhouse. And I always remembered that because I think it's such an important lesson, and probably one that Jed Hoyer takes with him to this day, since he was a young general manager at the time. And one I think that still applies. Not that you're going to have different guys coming into this clubhouse. Ryan Ludwig probably looked around like, I'm a bigger star than all these guys. I come from the Cardinals. I've done a bunch of things in my career, and I should be treated differently. And the organization kind of capitulated to that a little bit. Miguel Tejada was, up there with the whole Oakland A's thing, was a former MVP and probably thought I should be treated a certain way. And the club kind of gave in on it. Now, I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen with JP Sears. It's not my point. But, I will say, getting up until this point, you do have to remember the same standards apply that get you to the point where you're able to add at the trade deadline. Like all these guys are going to be treated exactly the same as the guys that had been treated before they got here. And, if JP Sears isn't getting it done, then, I would imagine I don't envision a scenario where if this continues, and it's too early to even say such a thing, I would suppose, then, I don't think you're going to see him in there much longer. But, again, it's one start and it's Arizona and it happens, and his life is probably turned completely upside down, but I understand that patience is probably wearing a little thin. But I always remember that about 2010 because I still think that's an important lesson about, how we got here mattered. And, that was how we got to this level of success. And we really shouldn't be changing things. But, now you're bringing in 6 different players. onto the 26-man roster. Is that what the number is? So, by that same story and history lesson here, I would imagine things, are going to look different, but maybe not function all that differently, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And that's now a thing that I'm going to be looking for. Kevin Correa was the 5th highest paid player on that team. And based on everything you just said about what Eckstein said, I mean, Tejada's numbers were okay when he came over to the Padres. He was still an above average hitter, a below average shortstop, but that's what they thought they were getting, and that's what they got. Ludwig is the problem. Ludwig was so bad. Ludwig hit 200 the rest of that season with the Padres, and it's not like they didn't have options, other people that they could play in left field, because Scott Hairston had been having a really good season. Chris Denorfia had been having a really good season. There was a guy named Aaron Cunningham that I think people were calling Sneaky Pig. He was actually having a pretty good season, bouncing up and down between the Major League Club and AAA. And I think that's probably what happened, was those 3 guys were all grinders who were having pretty good success when they got to the plate. And Ludwig just wasn't, and they just kept giving starts to Ludwig and kept giving him at bats and going like, he's Ryan Ludwig, he'll figure it out. I remember when that trade happened, I talked to my uncle, who's a big Cardinals fan, and he said, the thing about Ludwig is he's about the streakiest hitter you'll ever see. When he's bad, he's real bad. And when he's good, he's really good. And I think they were just waiting for him to turn that corner and be really good for a little while, and they never really got it, whether that's because of Petco or other reasons. But yeah, I love that team. That was a fun team.
Yeah, it was. But, again, is it a straight line to the trade deadline? We were just talking about that.
Yes.
I mean, if you ask David Eckstein, a guy who was a 2-time World Series MVP,
probably,
and he's the one that told me, and I always appreciated that he was comfortable telling me that. But, he did say, like, it wasn't, I said it was Ryan Ludwig, right? He's like, no, it wasn't Ludwig. It's that we just kept playing him when he wasn't doing anything. He's like, that is not the way our team was built. And guys around the clubhouse, you mentioned Scott Hairston, and people can say, well, Scott Hairston wasn't as good a player. Come on.
That year.
As Ryan Ludwig. But, for that team, it really mattered. Like, it really did matter. So,
yeah.
Now, again, this is also the Padres a couple of years ago. We talked about it yesterday, that decided that Josh Hader shouldn't be the closer. And they took the closing responsibilities away from Josh Hader a couple of years ago. So, we'll see. I'm with you. I don't have a ton. It was one of his worst starts ever. He had 10 hits and 5 earned runs and had one of the worst game scores of his career. I unless he's broken, then I think we'll probably reserve a little bit of judgment here for whatever it is that happens next time out. But 23 starts on the season. Now, Yu Darvish goes tonight, so we'll have something to talk about tomorrow. By the way, apropos of absolutely nothing, just because I see that I jotted it down in my notes. Do you follow Hector Gomez, the MLB insider?
I do, but I didn't see anything from him recently.
The record of the San Francisco Giants and the record of the Boston Red Sox since the Rafael Devers trade
is the same?
No.
Okay.
It's been 40 games. I will tell you that they have they are mirror images of each other.
The Giants have been awful. The Red Sox have been good.
That is correct. 25-15 for the Red Sox, 15-25 for the San Francisco Giants.
I mean, you make that trade for the long term, so you gotta just, I guess, swallow that and keep moving. But yikes! And look, that could be like Eckstein was saying. That could be a situation where Devers walks into a team full of grinders, and all of a sudden he's getting treated like a superstar. And everyone's like, "Hey, what the hell? This was our team full of grinders." You never know. I will say a thing I noticed about JP Sears, because my brain is I try and see the human when I'm like watching sports, and it's easy to go like, okay, it was JP Sears' first time pitching as a Padre, and he's throwing to Freddie Fermin. It's his first time throwing to Freddie Fermin, and AJ Cassavell had this great thing where he was talking about Freddie had to learn the different pitch sequencing for every pitcher on staff, and he's only been here a couple days, so that seems like a really hard thing to do. But two things made me focus last night. One was I saw Nestor Cortez. I saw a video of Nestor Cortez in the beginning of the season in spring training, and he had gotten a new baseball glove made, custom, in Milwaukee Brewers colors. And I saw that, and I was like, well, he can't wear that as Padre, that would look silly. So I wonder, is he going to get a new custom glove? Does he have an old one that he could use, et cetera, et cetera? And then last night I was looking at JP Sears in his brand new bright yellow Nike cleats. And I mean, I guess there's a chance that he could have worn those with the A's because they are yellow and green, but it looked like they were in Padre colors. And I was like, I wonder how much, like, because for pitchers, every little thing can throw you off. I was like, I wonder how much it would throw off a guy in the middle of a season to be like, by the way, you're wearing different cleats now. Like these ones that you've been wearing that you're comfortable, they're the wrong colors. So now you have to switch to these new ones over here and wear them in. And maybe they're going to feel a little bit different on your feet, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many things that change in these guys' lives when they get traded that you never think about. And with pitchers, I mean, hitters too, but especially pitchers, like you throw off one thing and they're like, oh, the whole thing's thrown off. So who knows? But I'm not taking, I wasn't mad. I wasn't happy, anything watching the game last night. I was just like, it's one of those games. It happens.
Yeah, I'm with you. Here's what people are angry about, I think. There was an email sent to season ticket holders of the Padres. It says the 2025 Padres season has provided exciting and memorable moments with the promise of more to come. Your enthusiastic and loyal support has resulted in record-setting season ticket membership and attendance while making Petco Park an electric environment and true home field advantage for our players. Thank you. We remain committed to fielding a championship caliber team this season and beyond. At the recent trade deadline, we made our playoff caliber team even better by adding one of MLB's elite closers in Mason Miller, all-star Ryan O'Hearn, Ramon Laureano, Freddie Fermin, Nestor Cortez, JP Sears. These new additions join an already talented roster that includes 5 Padre All-Stars this season: Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis, Robert Suarez, who's Venezuelan, by the way, Jason Adam, and Adrian Morejon. Our team has developed great chemistry under the leadership of Mike Schilt and is primed for the stretch run and postseason. You notice who's not being named here, by the way? I'm just noticing now is AJ Preller. Interesting. The excitement surrounding this team and our future has resulted in further growth in the number of season ticket members. For the third consecutive year, we cap season ticket membership and maintain a membership wait list, which has grown consistently over the course of the season. We plan to continue to cap season ticket membership and offer a membership wait list for the 2026 season. Going into next year, we increase payroll. We continue to make significant investments to improve your experience at America's #1 ballpark. We plan to make additional impactful improvements to Petco Park this coming offseason as a result of our continued investment into the ballpark and payroll, strong demand for Padre tickets, and significant increases in the cost of city services that the Padres must pay to operate the ballpark. Members will see a moderate price increase for 2026. You will be able to receive overall savings on your tickets up to 30% of single game tickets by being a member. I got to admit, I don't understand that. This is me parenthetically adding it. You will receive further information regarding your 2026 membership renewal tomorrow from our membership services team. This was sent yesterday, so probably in the inbox today. What else? And then it just goes on. A bunch of this is kind of boring about what access you get and what benefits you get. As we push for the postseason and prepare for October baseball at Petco Park, you will receive information regarding your postseason invoices. Blah, 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 blah. I want to thank you and hope to see you in 2026 to witness the next exciting chapter. With gratitude, Eric Grupner, CEO of the San Diego Padres. So this was sent to all season ticket members. This seems to have been one of the focal points of people's ire last night. It wasn't just JP Sears who, got the treatment on social media. And I don't mean that like people attacked him directly. I mean, lots of puns were being made about the name Sears.
Ugh.
Robust and all that. I mean, I'm sure you have thoughts on this. I'm not a season ticket member, for the record. You are not a season ticket member, for the record. I used to be. I will say, I mean, this is a longer conversation, I suppose. Are they exploiting loyalty? Are they saying, hey, like we're gonna, force our fans to go into debt so that we can pay off our debt? Or, it's just supply and demand economics. And it's the way sports work in the modern era, especially in the United States.
Yeah. Good catch by you that they mention AJ Preller, or they don't mention AJ Preller, but they do mention Mike Schilt, which is interesting.
That's the reason why it stood out to me. I didn't notice that they said under the direction of Mike Schilt, but while they were sitting there talking about who the players that were added there, they didn't say that our general manager, who is this madman at the wheel, that this is the guy who brought all these players in here and built the system that allows them to do this, even if people disagree with the approach. But anyway, that's sort of me just catching that on the fly.
We made our playoff caliber team even better. First of all, that's going to be funny if they don't make the playoffs, but let's assume they do. Yeah, I think there are two things. One, because the other one, I feel like I can just say the words and then light you on fire and let you go. One, I do think this is simple supply-demand economics of the ballpark sold out a lot of nights. Why don't we bump up tickets a little bit and see if that still holds true? Because if it does, that's extra money in our pocket. Secondly, do you think they're trying to make up the gap that's left by the fact that they don't make any money off a TV contract that they don't have?
I would think that is definitely a part of it.
Because I'm reading this whole thing, and if Eric Grupner was giving this speech in front of me, I think I'd raise my hand and go like, but aren't you supposed to be making some money from the TV side of things and not just off your fans and ticket sales? It would also be great. Like here's the thing about America's number one ballpark, which they say constantly.
Yes, good. I'm glad you're going down this road because it was either going to be you or it was going to be me. But let him hear it.
I think you'll have a different take on this than me. I'm fine with them calling it America's number one ballpark. The reason they call it America's number one ballpark is because like USA Today came out with a list at one point of here's ranked all the MLB ballparks, and they rated Petco Park 1. And I think it was a couple years ago. I don't even think the USA Today still does this. Doesn't really matter. At some point, the experience of going to the ballpark has to be affected by the price. If it's America's number one ballpark, but people cannot afford to go there, buy a hot dog and a beer without like leaving a couple $100, poorer, then the experience gets sullied a little bit. And after a while, it doesn't become America's favorite ballpark, which is what it should be. So if this was an announcement of, hey, we're putting season tickets up because supply, demand, et cetera, but concession prices are going down because we want you to enjoy your experience, that would be a good way to offset. But no, going to a Padre game every single year gets more and more expensive, from the tickets to the parking to the concessions to everything else. And at some point, it's like, do I like going to Disneyland with my kid? Yes. Does she enjoy it? Sure. Do I want to drop like the $500 or whatever to get me and my wife and my daughter there and pay for parking and pay for the concessions and pay for the tickets and everything? No, I don't have $500 to drop on stuff like that. So at some point, the America's number one ballpark thing loses its luster, because all you're doing is winning like a USA Today competition. You're not actually an enjoyable experience for anyone who's not wealthy. And that part frustrates me.
Okay, so I have recently looked this up, and the whole America's number one ballpark thing, as John points out, was literally something that they used to advertise on television because USA Today did do this annual survey and still does do this annual survey where it ranked Petco Park the number one ballpark in the United States. And the person who was in charge of marketing at the time, his name was Wayne Partello. So you might remember that. That's probably an enormous feather in the cap of Wayne Partello and the marketing team and everybody associated with the Padres to be named the number one ballpark. So I totally understand why they would peacock that around. And they should have.
Yeah.
And they should have been proud of that, right? People worked really, really hard, and people still work hard at keeping the ballpark up to a certain standard as defined by the organization. Yeah. To answer your question while you were finishing your thought, USA Today still does this, and they did this in 2025. And the San Diego Padres, or Petco Park, I should say, was not the number one ballpark in USA Today's survey. However it is that they come up with this, I don't know. I don't care. But this was March. PNC Park in Pittsburgh was number one. Oracle Park was number 2. Wrigley Field was number 3.
Ooh.
Camden Yards was number 4. Fenway
Ooh.
Park was number 5. And Petco Park was number 6.
Wow.
However, it doesn't quite hit the same when you send out an email saying America's number 6 ballpark. And somebody told me that it wasn't even that long afterwards that they lost the title.
It was like a year or two.
It was like a year or two because USA Today doesn't give a shit about this. They just do this sort of thing because they were looking for engagement. But, if you get named, then of course you're going to use that in any capacity imaginable. And the people at the time were like, nobody cares. Like, just keep going with it.
No one's going to check our work except maybe Darren Smith.
Right. Yeah, of course. And then I'm like this lone madman every day on the radio blathering on about this. People are like, what the fuck is the matter with that guy? So, they're like, yeah, whatever. We don't give a shit about that guy. We'll just take away his credential. So, it's not like we don't have the rest of these people under our thumb around here. So nobody would point that out. And I'm sure that there's some other dopey survey somewhere on some asshole website that will give them the number 1 title. So, you can always find somebody to say that it's the best ballpark. So, it's not like this is an election, it's just it's a silly thing that people put together every single year. So from that standpoint, I don't even know that they've been number 1 at USA Today since they got this a bunch of years ago, but it doesn't matter. And the people who were in the marketing department were presented with this detail and said, who cares? Like, what do you think? They're going to call us out for this? But yes, I thought that's where you were going with it. Now, all of that being said, I don't really have any great objection to this other than I read it and, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit. To me, I think you're right. I mean, I think that the increases, and I guess that this happens to coincide with some other announcement from the city council that they're going to be jacking up prices around Petco Park, not just for Padre games, but for any special event that's being held at Petco Park, whether it's Padre baseball or whether it's a Chris Brown concert coming in September.
Oh, yeah, the parking meters, right?
Yeah, like $10 an hour.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of glue. So, I take the trolley in, and it's convenient for me to do so just based on my own circumstances. And I happen to like it. I don't like driving downtown anymore. I hate it.
No, it's brutal.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, just brutal. So I'm glad not to do it. I'm glad that I have an option. I'm glad that I have an alternative. Mm-hmm. But other people might have, a pack of kids that they have to take care of. Other people, maybe the trolley isn't convenient for wherever it is that you live. San Diego County, one of the biggest counties in the United States. Other people, maybe mobility is an issue, right? So there's all these different things where I don't want to say that, you're an idiot if you're paying $50. But every time I get off that trolley and I walk through downtown San Diego, I am shocked when I see some of the parking prices that are $50 for a baseball game. I mean, I go to Snapdragon Stadium. I'm like, people pay $50. People are paying $50 to park in this parking lot. Have I paid more to go to a sporting event? I have.
Sure.
So, it's not, but I go, whoa, okay. I guess I'm fortunate. I feel fortunate. I don't deal with that. I get a parking pass. Which is why I don't, want to come out and attack people who don't want to pay these prices. Because, it's an easy thing to do. But I have paid them in my life, and I have spent a lot of money on tickets in my life. And I will continue to do so. But, I just am kind of curious to see where this goes, because I'm with you. I do think it is basic supply and demand economics. And I think maybe at some point, maybe this will have a breaking point. Maybe there will be a tipping point associated with this. I did jot down, I wonder what's going to happen on my Padre television deal. Am I still going to be just getting $100 a year? Because that's what I have to pay. And if you're in my situation where you don't have an option because you're a YouTube TV subscriber or you're a streamer, I am kind of curious to see what is going to happen there, because it's not like you can just watch the home games. If you're willing to commit that much money to go to games at home, then you're probably going to also pay the subscription fee, whatever it is.
I think you get it when you get season tickets. They usually throw in like,
really?
Yeah, it's they usually throw in like, it's MLB.TV. They're like, here's your full season of MLB.TV.
Yeah, and then there's this idea that there's a lockout coming up next year too. So who even knows what that's going to do? to baseball fans. We remember what happened in 1994. Those of us that were alive to have lived through it, where it took baseball a really, really long time to get the fans back because, that was a lockout that canceled the end of the regular season and canceled the postseason. And there wasn't a World Series, and Tony Gwynn didn't win another batting. Well, I mean, he won a batting title, but he didn't have a real chance of getting to 400.
Right.
And other players were doing things, hitting for triple crowns and such. And then it took the steroid era really to get people back engaged 6-7 years later. Then that kind of blew up again. So, I am kind of with you. I also think then I don't blame anybody who wants to sell their tickets when there's a popular team coming to town and you have a lot of demand from visiting fans that want to go to these games. I don't blame anybody that's going to sell their tickets. I know it sounds, I know it turns people off, but if you're going to be asked to spend this amount of money and somebody's going to help you make up a huge portion, a huge percentage of the amount of money that you have to shell out for season tickets by selling a couple of games when the Dodgers are in town or when the Yankees are in town or whatever, then I don't know that I feel like those people should be judged for that decision. Do you?
No, and back when I was a season ticket holder, that was actually my game plan going into the season. I would be like, okay, we're spending this much on tickets, and then by the end of the season, I would try and make back that much money by selling off, tickets to it'd be like, okay, a home Dodgers series. I'd sell off all the games but one. A home Yankee series, a home Mets series, a home Cubs series, all the games but one. And by the end of the season, you would usually, basically break even and be like, hey, it was, those were kind of free tickets because I did that. And that was the only way that I was able to really afford to do it. So no, I don't judge people for doing that at all.
Yeah, I don't. I know that that's a thing that pops up from time to time too. I don't know that it represents the majority of fans. And frankly, I don't know that I've seen a lot of that this year. So, I think if you were looking at it strictly from a bottom line business perspective, this is supply and demand. And, there seems to be an incredible demand for the product. And for the reasons that were listed right there in that email, supply is limited because they are capping season tickets.
Yeah.
So, again, I don't mean to just turn this into an economics discussion, but that's the way a lot of the sports in the United States are run. Now, you want me to start talking about caps that they put on season tickets or away tickets in the English Premier League? I'm happy to do it. Or tickets in La Liga? Happy to do it. I can have those kind of conversations and I can contrast what it is and how it is that fans, but even fans there are starting to bellyache an awful lot and complain that a lot of the owners, especially influenced by the new wave of American ownership, like Tom Brady.
Yeah.
John and I have decided we're going to watch a docu-series on Amazon Prime about Birmingham City and Tom Brady, its owner. But
very excited about that.
We'll get to that. But I do think Chelsea's got a U.S.-based owner, the Manchester United, the Glazers, Liverpool. So there has been this influence of some of the American capitalistic standards, which is turning a lot of people off. But even still, fans, the loyal fans are pointing out if you're going to put the tickets to a place where it is going to be really, really hard for the heart and soul of your fan base to go to these games, then it's just going to be a totally different experience inside of that building. I don't know that I've noticed any sort of change inside of the ballpark, but I also would tell you I'm not there enough to really be qualified to point out whether there has been a significant shift in the dynamic inside of Petco Park compared to what it was a bunch of years ago when the pricing was maybe considered by some and most a little bit more affordable.
Well, and then maybe this is just going to be like a, peek through the keyhole of a different conversation that we'll expand on in a different day. But you and I last night were talking about tourism and how all of this stuff that's going on with travel bans and tariffs and visa charges and everything is really hurting the city of Las Vegas, if not tourism across America. And, we were just saying, like, this is supply and demand. This is because the games are sold out every night. And there's a cap on season tickets. The cap on season tickets is not because they've sold every ticket in the stadium. They rely on a lot of people buying single game tickets. And part of the reason, like, I remember asking somebody, I think they worked for the Padres, like, how do they consistently get, people through the door, people to buy tickets? Because San Diego, like, look, we'll talk all day about how much we love San Diego, but it's kind of a small city, a small-ish market. It's hard to get, 20,000 people to show up on a Tuesday night to a game at Petco Park, or you would think so. And that person was like, well, San Diego is really kind of home for conferences, and there's always conferences going on in the convention center and or in the local hotels or whatever. And as a result, there's all these tourists, and they need something to do at night. And they know that going to Petco Park and watching the Padres is a fun and exciting experience. And they want to tell everyone, I went to that stadium. I saw Fernando Tatis Jr., et cetera, et cetera. I am curious about the conversation of, like, how much does tourism play a role in San Diego's economy? But I'm also curious about the Padres side of this. How much does tourism feed into those sellouts every single game or most games or whatever? How many of them are out-of-town visitors, and how many of them will continue to show up as out-of-town visitors? You said right away when we were talking about Vegas, you were like, good luck to the A's, because, the Raiders are one thing. Like, people will travel in for the weekend, see their team play the Vegas Raiders, and then leave. But no one's going to travel in to see their team, maybe a series again, if it's on a weekend or something like that. But it's going to be hard to fill up Vegas to start going to A's games if that's in fact where that MLB team is going to be. And I wonder how the Padres fit into that conversation. You probably don't have any additional knowledge that I don't have as far as, like, how many out-of-town guests are at the games on a regular basis.
No, I don't. And I don't know that that's the kind of thing that the club is going to share with people. But yeah, I mean, I was just noticing, actually, it came from the trip that we were just on in Cancun, that we were with a couple of people that live in Vegas. And, we were just having a general conversation about the weather. And our friends who live there are like, oh, this place is dead. Like, it is dead in Vegas. Like, what do you mean? Because it's summer. They're like, no, like it is a dead city right now. And, they went on, they're in the service industry, the F&B, food and beverage industry. And, they started rattling off, some of the stuff that was going on. So it kind of piqued my curiosity because, we're so close to Vegas. Like, a lot of Vegas companies, hotels, resorts, et cetera, advertise here in San Diego. And, then I started reading about a lot of this is, some of the politics of it, how much international tourism has dropped. A lot of this is a younger generation that can gamble on their own mobile devices. Some of this is people are just sick and tired of being price gouged. And I guess the moral of the story is, the story I think that was most held up as an example of the price gouging is a woman who paid $26 for a bottle of water, Fiji water.
Oof.
Which is just gross in the middle of the desert when everybody's dehydrating themselves all day by a swimming pool.
It's airport pricing.
Yeah, and it was $26. And I will say we were a little sensitive to this ourselves when we returned home from Europe, and we were going out for lunch every day, and we would be able to buy 2 bottles of wine for that bottle of Fiji water that this woman bought in some hotel because she was dehydrated and woke up thirsty in the middle of the night. And people are tired of it. And I will say, everybody's going to have a tipping point. Mm-hmm. Now, is next year going to be the tipping point for the Padres? I don't know. But if the team goes on to have further success, I feel like every year around this time when they send out the season ticket renewals, I see a lot of this kind of discourse. And I understand it. And it is becoming more, this is an expensive play, the most expensive place in the United States to live. And the cost of living is going up. And the cost of this product is going up as well. And I understand why people feel like maybe they're being priced out of this and that other people are being brought into the ballpark. But, for me, anecdotally, place looks great on television. Been to a couple of games this year. I have fun going.
Yeah.
I reconcile before I go to the game that this is what I'm going to be paying for whatever. I would tell you I don't really eat there much anymore.
No.
My wife, if we go, she will want to have something to eat at some point, something to drink, obviously. But I would probably prefer to support the local businesses around Petco Park.
That's what I do.
That support
I eat
the
and drink before I go
itself.
in.
Yeah. But I also am with you. I'm glad you brought up the television stuff because, I mean, how could there be all this demand for this product, whether it's the local demand, and I mentioned that the Padres, that the networks pick the Padres as one of the teams that they really prefer. I think there's only 2 teams in baseball that have more nationally televised games than the Padres, and that is a choice that the networks are making. And this team have one of the worst television deals in the sport. This still doesn't add up to me.
No.
And, until somebody tells me that I shouldn't be blaming the business side led by Eric Grupner, then I am going to blame the business side led by Eric Grupner. Because, that to me, you should be better. But I suppose it's possible that they're being handcuffed by Major League Baseball, which wants to use the Padres as the canary in the coal mine to find out if a streaming deal will be supported on a local level, given that this is what we all believe Major League Baseball is pushing somewhere down the road. So, I do think that is possible in slight defense and to be fair. But it doesn't make any sense to me that this is a team that has one of the worst television deals in the entire sport, and there seems to be such significant demand locally and nationally for the product. So,
hey, wait, quick question, because I noticed this a few weeks ago, although now I have the actual specifics in front of me. Do you want to take a guess on how many MLB teams are currently in the same situation as the Padres, where they have MLB Productions doing their local TV deal, and it's stream only, and it's not some local channel that's doing it? Do you want to take a guess at how many?
I mean, the number is not a big number. I mean, I think some of these, now I might have missed some of the updates because like the Rangers were in this situation, but I think they cut a side deal, a temporary deal with a local television company.
They did.
So what bothered me, and I think what you and I had talked about, whether it was Section 1904 or when we were just, getting our feet wet here, was that I started noticing some of these other teams were cutting side deals. If they got cut out by the whole Bally's implosion thing or Diamond Sports Group, whatever it was, yeah, like they were relying on baseball, but they were starting to cut some side deals here, and the Padres weren't one of them. And I was like, wait, what? I'm going to guess it can't be more than about 3 or 4.
6.
6? Okay.
6. It is Padres, Diamondbacks, Rockies, so 60% of the NL West, Cleveland, Minnesota, and Seattle, which Seattle's a pretty big market.
That 100% are reliant just on a streaming service.
Yeah,
that don't have any like local cable deal.
It says that for Seattle, MLB took over production of Mariners telecasts on behalf of Root Sports Northwest. I don't know what the hell that means. But for the other 5, it is literally Padres.tv, D-backs.tv, Rockies.tv. That's how you watch those teams.
Yeah, Root Sports sounds like one of those. I know the whole thing is dying. Yeah. The whole concept of the regional sports network, but that sounds like it might be a little bit better than where the Padres are, which is Kevin Acee has written, and Kevin's getting information from the inside that it is, it's getting $25-30 million a year, somewhere in that range. That just seems. I think that's hard to explain. I don't know. I can't wrap my mind around it. I can't, not that I expect them to be getting the $60 million a year that they were getting from their previous television deal, but to be getting like less than half of that, I don't know. Then again, maybe that's just the reality of the situation, and this is what they're forced to do. But I don't know. I think there is a caution out there that these things don't last forever. And, I guess, the real cynical side of me does wonder, is this thing headed towards a sale somewhere down the road? And they're just trying to, to make as much money, off the, exploiting the loyalty of the fans, given, the circumstances, so that they can pay off a little bit of their debt just in order to turn this around and sell it somewhere down the road for a big profit. Yeah, I suppose that would be the most cynical approach that you could take through all of this.
Yeah. And being able to promise someone who came in like, hey, you can make money selling this TV deal if you really want, like that would just be one more chip. Something to consider.
Passing along the cost of all of their financial, I don't want to say have financial difficulties, but passing along the cost of their debt so they can jack up the price of the product, putting it on the fans just so you can turn around and you can sell it for a higher price tag somewhere down the road, which I think is probably applicable across the board, but that would be the most cynical way and jaded way of looking at it, I suppose. There are other ways of looking at this. I saw on our Discord channel today. I'm not going to talk for anybody. I'm not going to talk for Corey Stewart. I'm not going to talk for anybody who's been very, very vocal about this sort of stuff on social media. But I know that you can ask these people directly questions if you want, but I'm not going to jump into any of those conversations, and I think you probably would agree with that as well. Well, all right. That's over an hour, which is way longer than I thought we were going to go today, given that we weren't even going to talk about sports. We were going to talk about Jim Acosta interviewing a dead victim of the Parkland high school shooting.
That was a
mistake. AI.
That was a mistake.
We are going to commit, though. We're going to watch this Amazon Prime show on Birmingham City just to see if there's any unintended comedy between Tom Brady and Wayne Rooney.
I'm gonna watch it. I'm actually interested in the story of Birmingham City, like as a club. I'm interested in it based on the trailer that I think you sent me. It appeared like Tom Brady was not being treated with the same reverence that he gets in America.
That's what I like about it.
And there was one line where he was like, "You guys need a name for me, like savior." And I was like, I need to watch the show just to see if that's an actual thing that he said, because that is an insane thing for a person to say out loud. But I'm intrigued by the entire thing. Yes, if Tom Brady at all comes face to face with Wayne Rooney, it'll be must-watch television.
Oh, I started reading some of the reviews of this to see how much it was getting panned by some of the English press. And people that have seen a preview say that there are some pretty tasty encounters between Brady and Wayne Rooney.
Ooh.
Which I'm here for. So
do the English still love Wayne Rooney? I know he never won them the World Cup. They thought he might, but do they still love him? Complicated relationship.
If you're given a choice of Tom Brady or Wayne Rooney,
they're picking Wayne Rooney.
Probably.
Okay.
Probably Wayno, but I'm not too sure about that one. I also think that one of the part of the appeal for me on this is that it's created by Stephen Knight, who is the creator or director of Peaky Blinders.
Really?
Which was based in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So, I guess this sounds like something that's another passion project for him. I'm generally leery of these docuseries because they're not really documentaries. Usually, I don't know like how much. I think in the trailer, one of the coaches goes into the dressing room, the locker room, and kicks the camera crew out. Like that's not a documentary, I don't know if there's editorial control. If there are things that Brady says, no, we can't show that. Let's edit that out.
Right.
I understand sometimes you can't show everybody everything. You can't show anybody a big whiteboard about people that you want to sign on the transfer window.
Right.
So I understand that. But, if this is just a way of trying to, to increase Tom Brady's Q rating somehow in Birmingham, then I don't know. Is he trying to do the Wrexham thing? He even sort of pokes fun at Wrexham at one point during the trailer, where I guess that's the obvious comparison. Is he trying to do for Birmingham City what the guys did for Ryan Reynolds and what's the other guy's name?
Rob McElhenney?
Yeah, what they did for Wrexham. And he kind of looks at the camera and he takes his thumb and he points it down, right? Like he's like Julius Caesar at the Roman theater. So
what a weirdo.
Yeah, he looks weird, So I'm sort of drawn into how weird Brady looks.
Because of all the plastic surgery.
Yeah, and he just says a lot of things that sound like Brady. Like I've never failed at anything. And you're like, I don't know. I mean, is that accurate?
Could have been a starter at Michigan if that was true.
I mean, I always think that these guys, I'm always fascinated by athletes when there's the one thing that they're really, really known for. I think the first time I remember bringing this up was Oscar De La Hoya when he was nearing the end of his boxing career. And everybody's like, well, what are you going to do afterwards? He's like, well, I think I'm going to try to be a professional golfer. And you're like,
is that what he said?
Yeah. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Do you really think it's that easy? You're just going to go be a pro golfer? These people have been raised since they're knee high to be professional golfers. You can't just say because I was a really, really good boxer that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go be on the PGA Tour. It's like you're delusional. And I think a lot of these guys are kind of delusional. And Brady has failed at stuff. I mean, he's had business ventures that have gone belly up.
Sure.
Wasn't he big on the whole crypto thing? He was part of that lawsuit. So, yeah, I don't know that I would say that every single moment of this guy's life has been a screaming success, but he's a great football player. Maybe one of the best football players we've ever seen. Is he going to be a good owner with the Raiders? Has he been a great broadcaster? Is he going to be a good owner in a place that he has absolutely no connections to whatsoever in Birmingham City? I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of curious to see, but I do tend to think as a default position that these guys are all delusional about the kind of success that they're capable of having beyond the very thing that turned them into the successful person that we all got to know.
Okay, so it's funny you say that. I've been thinking about this for like a solid week now since I heard Jesse Agler and I think Tony Gwynn Jr. talking about it on a Padres broadcast. And Jesse was saying, it's so funny with these guys, the head games that go into being a professional athlete. He's like, because you need absolutely reckless confidence in yourself to get to the major league level. He's like, however, once you get to the major league level, one of the most important things you could possibly have is self-awareness. And he's like, so they're basically told the only way you can get to the majors is to assume that you're the greatest baseball player who ever existed. But once you get here, you cannot think that way. You cannot act that way. You need to be completely self-aware and be like, what's my role? Oh, it's this tiny thing. I'm this utility guy off the bench. Cool. I'm going to do that as well as I possibly can. And he's like, and some guys can make that transition and some guys can't. My wife was yelling the other day about Tom Brady because he attacked. He replied to Scotty Scheffler's press conference where Scotty was like,
right.
Yeah, this isn't a life. And if this ever interfered with my home life, blah, blah, blah. And Tom Brady was like, well, I think, I was being a good husband and a good father when I was at work and putting in the practice hours and the film hours. And that's me. I feel connected to my family when I'm doing that. And then I just thought of that when you said Tom Brady's never failed at anything in life, or so he says. And my wife saw that and she was like, didn't he get divorced?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. She's like, what's he doing giving Scotty Scheffler advice? It's like, I don't know. And there you go. A failure from Tom Brady that he's not self-aware enough to admit is a failure.
Right. Or the fact that his marriage failed. That's another thing that Tom Brady failed at.
Yeah. That's
marriage.
Yeah.
Didn't work. And then you went up on a stage and I thought he was really, really humorous during the roast. He also got up there and let a bunch of people make fun of his wife and his kids. Where is it? I just saw this here. By the way, it sounds like Imperial Beach is under attack. There's just military jets flying overhead right now. I don't know what's happening.
Imperial Beach might actually be under attack. I can hear that. That sounds like an old war movie.
What is it that Brady says? Here's the quote that I read last night. This is the BBC. Brady told his colleagues, this is in the docuseries, I'm a little worried about our head coach's work ethic. Now, I will point out, Wayne Rooney got fired, and his team got relegated.
Shortly thereafter, right?
Yeah. He called the players lazy and entitled. That is a quote. Let's see.
I think this is the beginning of a villain arc for Tom Brady.
Maybe he's just going to be super cutthroat here. I don't know. Let's see. Then they interview some of these fans, and the fan says, let's see. Tom Brady's football knowledge you could fit onto the head of a pin.
I mean, he's Ted Lasso, except he's not actually coaching the team, right?
Yeah. I don't know. It sounds like it could be an interesting thing for us to talk about on a weekly basis. But
agreed.
All right. Well, that's that. So enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody. If you're going to Snapdragon Stadium, we'll see you there. And again, tomorrow we'll have a guest. We have a couple of guests lined up this week. So
yep. Should be fun.
Tomorrow, backheeled.com if you want to get a jump on that. We'll link it into the front row seat tomorrow. Thank you as always for your support. Can't do it without you. And if you're enjoying this, please tell a friend, encourage a friend to help support this. This is 100% locally owned and operated. It is for locals by people who live here locally. So we do appreciate that. One of the mission statements of Section 1904. We'll see you tomorrow.